If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedmann.
Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, tips, and ideas from the masters, which includes me, your host, Susan Friedmann, the author, marketing mentor, and influencer. Hey, it's good to be back with you again. Over the last few weeks, I've been discussing excuses authors make for not marketing their book. So far, we've covered lack of money and the lack of time. Today, I'm going to talk about the third stumbling block, and that's the lack of marketing and sales expertise. The justification I hear time and time again is that authors see themselves as writers and not marketers. If this is what you're thinking, hey, no worries, I've got you covered. My aim is to always share down-to-earth, common sense information to help make your book and author marketing journey much easier and quicker. Let's go back to the image we've been using of imagining your book as your baby. Any parent listening to this knows that when their little bundle of joy appears on the scene, all you want to do, you want to nurture it, feed it, and look after it as best you can. You want to show it off to all your friends and family. And you and your partner talk endlessly about the right way to raise your offspring. Hey, you may not necessarily both agree, but that's a whole different story. The most important lesson here is that you want to look after it and give it the best you possibly can, based in part on your financial situation. I doubt that few of you gave birth just wanting to hand your baby over to someone else to raise. As the kid grows older, perhaps that notion does cross your mind, but again, that's a whole separate issue. Anyone with teenagers knows exactly what I'm talking about. Your focus during those early days, weeks, and months is to dedicate yourself to developing the right habits and routines. Do you ever tell yourself and others that you don't have time to look after your sweet, innocent little bambino? I doubt that you'd admit that thought to anyone. Then mums who breastfeed have that internal clock with a buzzer that goes off every few hours to remind them, hey, it's time for a feed. Now relate this caring to the sweet, innocent book you created and breathed life into. Whether you realize it or not, but telling people about your baby because you want them to admire it is using some basic marketing and promotional tactics, which means you've got the first lesson in Marketing 101 taken care of. Does this sound easy? Because if it does, why would you want to relegate your baby to a shelf in your office just to collect dust because you selfishly can't find time to market and promote it? Of course, only you can answer that question. With all of this, your mindset matters. And it all starts when you make up your mind that marketing's important enough to carve out time to devote to it. Your whole approach to your book and author marketing is going to expose your mindset, not only to yourself, but to the rest of the world. Hey, no pressure. Now let's address the question, what is marketing? At the core of all marketing activities is a two-party system. There's a seller and a buyer. The role of the seller is that he or she wants to exchange tangible goods or intangible services for some sort of payment from the buyer. This transaction could be a barter, that's exchanging goods and services for other goods and services without using money. However, I think that most of us would prefer money, which of course can be cash, checks, credit cards, or now people are also trading in cryptocurrency. Marketing is the umbrella under which every activity falls to get your product or service into the hands of the buyer. Those activities include promotion, publicity, advertising, and sales. There's often a misunderstanding about the terms sales and marketing. So let's unravel this. Sales falls under the marketing umbrella, which means that marketing activities lead to sales. In simple terms, if you promote your book on your website, you hope that it will lead to sales. Now, traditional marketing consists of 4 key elements, better known as the 4 Ps of marketing. That is, the product, the price, the promotion, and the placement. Let's take a quick look at each of these and what they represent. First, there's the product. Quite literally, this is what you sell, whether it's your book, a training course, your coaching services, or anything else you want somebody to buy. However, a critical component is that whatever you're selling has to meet the customer's needs. The foundation of all marketing comprises of supply and demand. In other words, someone has to want or need what you have to offer, because otherwise you get saddled with a boatload of unsold stuff. Hey, embarrassingly, I have to admit that I have unsold books and videos and courses in my garage because over the years, I've created products that I thought people needed. The problem was that they might need them, but they didn't necessarily want them enough to actually pay for them. Next is the second element of marketing, and that is pricing. This is when you want the buyer to actually pay for your product or service. That is the price you charge for this exchange to take place. Hey, it's one thing to have a great-looking book, top-notch training, or a coaching program, but getting people to part with money to pay for it is something quite different. Understanding the value of what you offer and the price tag you attach to that value is something that requires a thorough understanding of what people are willing to invest. When I started out in the training industry over 30 years ago, I thought that if I charged significantly less than my competition, in fact, that was a whopping 75% less, I'd naturally entice prospects to buy. That was a big mistake. As it turns out, this isn't a recommended strategy in the training industry. Why? Because potential buyers for training often equate cheap with not as good. I quickly learned that raising my price to match or slightly undercut competitors was a far better strategy. In fact, it did mean that I had to raise my price tag several $100s more, which at first made me feel super uncomfortable. I had to practice saying the amount so that when I was asked, it just rolled off my tongue as if it was the most natural thing in the world. And then each time I decided to raise my fees, I had to practice this all over again. Pricing for services is often where many authors have a challenge. They invariably underprice their value in the marketplace. I often get asked, what should I charge for a speaking engagement? My answer? It depends. Factors that you have to consider are often based on the client's budget. This, of course, will vary from one client to another. What they previously paid speakers, again, this is a variable. But most important, what do you feel your time and value are worth? Whatever that figure is, make sure it's a number you can say without any hesitation at all. As an aside, if you're asked to speak for free, make sure of a few things. Make sure that you're speaking to your target audience. Make sure you're getting something in exchange, such as having an article placed in the company or association's newsletter or other publication they send out to clients or members. However, definitely get them to pay your travel and accommodation expenses. That should be a non-negotiable. Many years ago, when I started my training company, I wanted to attend a significant industry event in Washington, D.C. I wanted the opportunity to mix and mingle and rub shoulders with potential clients. Only one problem. I lived in Cincinnati and didn't have the funds to buy an airline ticket and pay for several nights' stay at a hotel. What did I do? I thought about who could potentially supply an airline ticket and then naturally came up with the obvious, an airline company. So I started calling around, offering to do a customer service training in exchange for a round-trip ticket from Cincinnati to Washington, D.C. After several attempts, I lucked out and found someone in the training department at American Airlines who agreed to the exchange. Remember we talked about bartering earlier? That's exactly what this was. Then I tried the same technique with different hotels that were within walking distance of the convention center. And again, I lucked out. The Holiday Inn around the corner from the event offered me 3 nights in exchange for some staff training. Just like Cinderella, my wishes were granted, but instead of going to the ball, I went to the convention instead. I had to pinch myself when I was there to make sure that this was real and not a dream. As per the exchange agreement, I conducted a couple of training sessions for the hotel staff, but I'm actually still waiting to do the training for the airline. And no, I didn't get to dance with the prince, but then I wasn't looking to either. The third marketing element is promotion. This is the message, the promise, or the story you tell to your target audience about your product or service. As you're probably aware, there are a variety of different promotional tactics, ranging from advertising to sales promotion, public relations to community engagement, and many more cool techniques, thanks to the magical power of technology. Personally, my favorite is publicity. I used this to my advantage when I wanted to get exposure in the trade show industry. That was my target audience at the time when I first started my training company. I wrote articles and had them published in every single magazine and publication around the world that focused on the trade show industry. And whenever I could, I negotiated with a publication to write a regular column. Some of the publications paid a small stipend for this, but most of the time, I did it for the great exposure to my target audience. All the material I used was all taken from my books. I loved it when people told me that they saw me everywhere. Of course, that was merely a perception, but you know what? I never argued with them because that's exactly what I wanted them to think, that I was everywhere. Over the years, this strategy paid off, and I went from being an unknown in the industry to being a go-to recognized expert. Hardly a week went by without a journalist contacting me for tips about an article that they were writing on an upcoming industry trade show. My all-time favorite was the Quarter Horse magazine. Now, I know enough about horses to know what one looks like, and yes, they're magnificent animals. And I've also actually ridden one a couple of times, but that's it. However, I did know trade shows, and that's the expertise the journalist was looking for. Final marketing element is placement. This is all about where your target audience can find and buy your products or services. For example, can they find them online, in a store, or in a catalog? Wherever you choose to sell your products or services, the trick is to make sure that the transaction is as simple and easy as possible. Why? Because the harder you make it for your target audience to buy, the fewer sales you're likely to make, however wonderful your offerings. Most authors are selling their books, courses, and services online, and your website is the absolute best place to lead people to so that they can contact you to buy if they can't just buy directly. When prospects come to your website, you want a way to capture their name and email address. This will allow you to build your own list so that you can market to them. In a future episode, I'll talk about lead magnets and building your own list. Now you have the 4 key marketing elements: product, price, promotion, and placement. I've covered a boatload of information in this episode. I definitely recommend taking the time to listen to it again. The next step is putting it all together into a simple but usable strategy or plan. This too is going to be the focus of a future episode. However, if you're chomping at the bit to put your own plan together, let's chat. You can get a complimentary 20-minute session with me to discuss some powerful ideas that could work for you. To schedule time with me, go to brainstormwithsusan.com. That's brainstormwithsusan.com, and you'll find that address in the show notes. In our next episode, I'll discuss the fourth book and author marketing stumbling block, and that is lack of confidence. So until next time we meet, here's wishing you much book and author marketing success.
The time is now to take action and finally build your book-selling empire. And the great news is that Susan is here to help you. Visit bookmarketingmentors.com and sign up for a free 15-minute book marketing strategy session with Susan. She'll help you discover your first steps to marketing and selling your book. Only those who take action are rewarded, so visit bookmarketingmentors.com, and we'll see you again next week.